Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you joining us from Talking Film Online, or TFO as we fondly call it. TFO began almost on a whim in June 2020 during the lockdown, thanks to Professor Nikhila and Dr. Geeta Vishwanathan. What started as a simple idea has grown into a vibrant community that meets every Saturday at 9 p.m. on Zoom to discuss films from around the world. Our group is a diverse family of film scholars, researchers, students, teachers, and passionate cinephiles united by the love of cinema. Over time, we have had the pleasure of hosting filmmakers, editors, and cinematographers in our sessions, including legends such as Aparna Sen, Amol Palekar, Girish Kasaravalli, and other Gopalakrishnan. We have organized several film festivals focusing on East European, Iranian, and women's cinema. Each June, we celebrate TF's anniversary with a smartphone short film contest for students and lecture series in collaboration with university departments. In September 2024, we held our first offline international seminar on Indian cinema in the digital era, continuities and discontinuities with FCT Baroda. Tonight, we are gathered to discuss the cinematic classic Garm Hawa, and it is our great privilege to have Dr. Antara Ghatak ma'am to lead this discussion. Dr. Ghatak is an assistant professor and coordinator of the postgraduate course in the Department of English, St. Xavier's University, Kolkata. She also serves as the convener of the Women and Development Set at the university. She holds her MPhil and PhD in English literature from the University of Calcutta. Her research focuses on gender studies and memory studies, with a keen interest in genocidal communities and the partition of India. She has successfully guided three doctoral dissertations and has presented her work at national and international conferences. Her publications on gender and partition have appeared in Routledge and Orient Blackstone. Dr. Ghotok is also a certified historian from Stanford University, actively engaged in archiving documents related to post conflict societies. Beyond her academic pursuits, she is a trained classical dancer with a deep passion for the performing arts. It is truly an honor to have you with us this evening, ma'am, and we are very much looking forward to a rich, engaging, and thought provoking discussion. It is now my pleasure to hand over the session to Dr. Antara Ghatak, ma'am, who will guide us through tonight's discussion. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Rubaya. Namaskar. Thank you for having me on this platform. So I thank TFO for giving me the opportunity to engage in a discussion and meeting uh, intellectual scholars all over the world. And I am sure that this is going to be a kind of an enriching experience for me as well. So today we have gathered here to discuss on a very seminal movie, Garm Hawa, which was published in the year 1974. Rebecca, can I request you to just show the poster that I had sent you through this? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, sure.
Yes. So this is this while I was doing my homework on Garam Hawa, this one image that had been in my mind for a very long time was this a very long poster or a very long kind of a kind of a protest in words that was put up in the year 2020 in Jugo Bharati Krirangan in a match between East Bengal and Mohun Bagan in January 2020. What does it say? It is written in Bengali, Rokto diye kenamati, kagoj diye noy. If I may translate it to the best of my abilities, it says that a paper cannot replace a land acquired through blood. So that is the caption, that is the message of this long poster which was exhibited. And as we know that East Bengal, Mohun Bagan are rivals, in football. But this is one platform in January 2020 that they came together and they put up this poster, which definitely talks about, leads us to the part of discussion that I'm going to undertake. Okay. So this is in January 2020. If I go back a little, earlier, It was in July, if I'm correct, the dates, July 30th, 2018, the first draft of the National Register of Citizens, that is NRC, for the state of Assam was released to identify people who had been supposedly staying illegally in the state. Nearly 40 lakh, that is 4 million people, were marked as infiltrators, many of whom were Bengali Muslims in origin, whose ancestors had once migrated from Bangladesh. So this NRC controversy foregrounds the continuing legacy of the displacement of Bengali Muslims that can be traced to the 1950s. And the contemporary debates on citizenship and belonging in India and South Asia are constantly haunted by the partition. And it prompts us to discuss partition not as an immediate historical catastrophe, but as a lingering presence and the long shadow it has cast over the everyday lives of the subcontinent. Yes, you can just, put me back on the screen. I mean, this is the poster I wanted to show. So I'm sorry for the background noise. I mean, there's a lot of background noise going on. There's some kind of program. So we were talking about that how partition has, been beyond an immediate historical catastrophe and how it has come to affect our everyday lives as we are discussing this at this moment. And this is why I thought that Garm Hawa as a movie is so pertinent, because nearly after 80 years after the partition, if we have seen the movie, it talks about that how that did not end with August 1947. Okay, Bhutalia has already established this in The Other Side of Silence, that despite its continuing presence in the public memory, the violence and the trauma have been mostly faced by the Indian state, has refused to memorialize the event in any manner. That is, Bhutalia has stated in The Other Side of Silence. And therefore, in absence of any formal memorialization, what happens? Literature and films of the partition, along with the oral testimonies, act as a potent site for the memorialization of human tragedy, necessitating the reconceptualization of partition violence. And whereas the historians provide a larger framework, the empirical data is important. Looking at at an event from the historical point of view is important. They provide a larger framework for understanding the partition violence. The nuanced texture of loss, pain, the lived experiences, suffering is often understood better in the works of creative writers, filmmakers, and they act as a counter discourse to the official histories, owing to their focus on these tales through the individual lives. I am a performing artist myself, and I have seen, I have experimented with, presenting the partition along with me offering a course. And I have seen that how students have, reacted and how students have come up with a kind of expression that you can see on their face. So performing arts, cinema, literature, all these things do have a very separate kind of appeal other than history. So, yeah. Today's discussion is about the cinematic representation of the partition of India. Since we have gathered here for a discussion on films, and TFO is doing a wonderful job of talking cinema, so as to say. So cinematic representation of partition of India. In the early years, if I just trace back how partition was represented in India from the top of my head, these are the names of few movies that I can come up with. That M.L. Anand's Lahore in 1949, if you watch that. Of course, Ghatak's Meghe-Dhaka-Tara in 1960. It is about the refugee problem after the partition of India. Yash Chopra's Dharmaputra in 1961. I'm trying to chronologically, trace a few films. Satyu's Garm Hawa in 1974. Then we have Govind Nihalani's depiction of Bisham Sahni's novel Tamas in a television series, which was very popular. Train to Pakistan in 1998. Earth 1947 in 1998. Then we have Hey Ram in 2000. Gadar 2001, Pinjar 2003, Veer Zara, 2004. Shankotil is a movie, Bengali movie, which talks about, this divide between Bangladesh and India. Starred by Prosenjit Chatterjee in 2016. And if you have seen, I have seen that in OTT, Sardar Ka Grandson, 2021. So a kind of a rough tracing that how, you can look back at how movies. I'm not talking about Ray's movies of the trilogy of Mohanagar, that trilogy. That is also very important in tracing the aftermath of the partition in the 1950s. Okay, so all these things they trace the cinematic representation of the partition of India. Now, just to talk about the partition, it would not be justified if I don't consider the historical backdrop of the partition. The partition of 1947 was not just a political division, it was a human catastrophe of the unparalleled scale. And if empirical data has to be considered, and nearly 15 million people were uprooted and a death over 1 million. So that is the data we have at hand. We have abducted women, we have sexually abused women. We still do not have consolidated data about the disabled, constituency population that is yet to be unfolded. And so this is what we all know. We are all aware of this, sharing the same cultural space. And it also fractured communities that had coexisted for centuries, sowing seeds of mistrust and communal discord. For the Muslims who stayed behind in India, partition marked the beginning of a new struggle to define belonging in a country where their loyalty was constantly under scrutiny. So this is about a very short historical backdrop. We have been learning, we have been talking about, the partition of India right from our textbooks in school. So I'm not going to talk about more about the empirical data. The next, as we are talking about Garm Hawa, I am going to talk a little bit about the context and the controversy regarding the film. Okay, released in 1947, Garm Hawa, or The Scorched Wind, The Hot Winds, stands as one of the most poignant cinematic portrayals of partition's aftermath. Directed by M.S. Sathyu and based on Isma Chughta's short story, the film narrates the tale of the Mirza family, a Muslim household grappling with dislocation, loss, and faith in post-partition India. So, and the film's release was fraught with so much controversy. The censor board initially stalled it, fearing that it would incite communal disharmony. L.K. Advani remarked in The Observer that, I quote, the movie was made in Pakistan, while Bal Thacker expressed his skepticism about its message. Yet, the opposition was counterbalanced by defenders of the film's integrity, most notably Satyajit Ray, who was deeply pained by the critics, labeling it as anti-secular. And Ray wrote to Desh Potrika, affirming Garm Hawa's empathetic and humanistic portrayal of India's Muslim. So it was ultimately the intervention of the then Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi, that enabled its release. And the irony is that once feared for its potential divide, it went to represent India at the Cannes Film Festival and the Academy Awards, a testament to its universal message of resilience and coexistence. So this is something I thought that I would share with you, that how the local becomes the global. I'm sure you have watched the movie. Ananya said that, be rest assured that all the members of the TFO have watched the movie. So plot and theme. If we talk about that, when I'm talking about plot and theme, I mean that I'm going to talk about it, how the personal becomes political and vice versa. That's what I'm going to talk about. So at the heart of Garm Hawa lies the story of Salim Mirza. It starts with him, a principal shoe manufacturer from Agra who chose to stay in India after his relatives migrated to Pakistan, the newly formed state, due to the 1947 partition. Salim Mirza of Agra lived with their respective families and their mother in the lavish ancestral home, which they call as Haveli. And although the legal papers of the ownership of the Haveli is in Halim's name, Halim is the elder brother of Salim. who is a local politician, but he does not believe in his own rousing political speeches. Salima is Salim's wife is Jamila, and he has two sons, Bakra, who has a son also and a wife, and Sikandar, mm, who through the course of the film becomes a college graduate, embarks a job search with his classmates and gets rejected, and consequently becomes disillusioned in the state of the nation. Why am I talking about these characters, mentioning them? Because each of their lives have been altered by a political decision, and they have been unwittingly embroiled in this. Okay, so how the political becomes personal and vice versa. And Salim's daughter, we have Amina is in love with Halim's son Qasim. And however, partition causes Halim to move to Pakistan with his family under false pretense. But Salim Mirza, with his adamant love for the country, in the country where he's born, uh, refuses to move and stays back in the locality. So this is where the story takes its how the story takes kind of flight. And we see that as Halim has moved to Pakistan along with his son, the love life of Amina cannot be fulfilled, and so there's a kind of a gap. So there's a kind of a fracture. Later, Qasim comes back to marry Amina in an act of inspired by the act of rebellion against his father, who wanted to use his son's marriage as an opportunity to climb the social ladder. This union, though, is interrupted by the newly formed nation state, as it is soon discovered that Qasim does not have the necessary papers and documents to stay in his erstwhile motherland, and is deported soon after. So the nation, keeps on intervening in their private lives. And this brings us to my next, focus in this, why I'm discussing this, that the state continues with a series of both public and private disruptions in the Mirza household, which forms the crux of the filmic narrative. As the film unfolds, Salim faces systemic discrimination, banks refuses loans, friends turn away, and communal prejudices corrode everyday life. And Mirza family's economic decline mirrors the marginalization of Muslims in post-partition India. So this is one aspect of the movie that is stares, at our face, and the other part is that the love life, the love and loss, they intertwine in the story of Amina and Qasim, whose separation underscores the personal tragedy birthed by political boundaries. Even as some of Mirza's are compelled to migrate, Salim's attachment to the land of his ancestors, its monuments, shrines, friendships anchors him. But it is the movie, proceeds and entangles us all as audience to see that how is there any solution to such a decision that he has taken, or can he be a kind of a patriarchal figure who can deliver the sorrow of Amina, his own daughter? So that is where the complexities of the movie lies, I think. And the other thing that, of course, the Garm Hawa explores is the intricate relationship that the woman shares with the home. Women, of course, are it happens in all conflict and post-conflict society that women are unwittingly embroiled in the bigger nationalistic discourse. They are not active agencies. They do not have, any kind of personal interest in this the larger discourse, neither the political nor the patriarchal, but they become the site where the power relations are meted out. In the movies that we see in Pinjar, suppose Amrita Pritam's Pinjar, we see that how power struggles, the religious power struggles are meted out on the body of the woman. But here we see that it is a space, okay? It is a space, it is the home that where this or the sorrows of a woman are fraughting. And home isn't free from the rigors of patriarchy and is pre-governed by the hierarchical considerations. So this is what is given. This is kind of fixed in a in the lives of women, especially caught in this crossfire of conflict. And the house is in the sinister aftermath of the partition ceases to exist in split or separation from the greater political juridical. Instead, discarding the consideration of lived and belonging, it is now reduced to the consideration of ownership. We see that they are getting summons of the ownership of the house. The intimacies that the individual has so long cherished with the special are irrelevant without the acknowledgement of the juridical. So herein comes the policies, the lawmaking policies, the political interventions. Women as subjects mediated by and dependent upon patriarchal agents lack their agency to claim rights of possession. And it is in through the women narratives, that is Dadi Amma, Amina, and Jamila, that we get to see that such a crisis that maybe, kind of metaphorically represent all women caught in the, in the aftermath of the partition film. So the most striking figure that is there is Dadi Amma. She has a unique relationship with her ancestral home, for it is not just a space of accommodation, but also a space which bears witness to histories of the dead and the departed. And Amina, who is another kind of Jisha Menon, if I remember correctly, had called her double of Dadi, because she is seen as an accessory and subsequently an access in the patriarchal structure of the home. Okay, so home is the constant here. Home is the space. Her parents, following the tendencies and traditions of the middle class patriarchy, are eager to marry her to a prospective husband. In the consequence, when the family moves to a new but a smaller house, she has to share a room with her brother Sikandar, which at first she refuses to do. Her brother jokingly replies, played by Farooq Sheikh, that it is Amina who is an excess in their house, and it is not the house which is small. So we are looking at the person vis-a-vis the house, the space, okay? And this sense of being a burden can only be got rid of within the Muslim patriarchal structure when she gets married and starts a family of her own. In the introductory sequence, she's seen to be trying her wedding costume in the Haveli's courtyard, and her father gives her money to buy extra bangles for her wedding. This is a very endearing scene, okay? Her identity within this structure, she is kind of, contained in the structure of home, this particular space. Her identity within this structure, therefore, is concerned within the realms of marriage and domesticity, despite her ability to read and write. And when she's left by Qasim and she's abandoned, Qasim goes away. This identity crumbles and is shrouded by a sense of alienation which haunts her and displaces her within her own home. So, if we look at the nation as a kind of a space where these people have home, the Haveli becomes a microcosmic representation of the nation in relation to women. And the second level of displacement takes place when another cousin, Shamshad, migrates to Pakistan with his family after prolonged courtship and promises of getting married. And the second betrayal occurring again within the intimate structure of kinship and family precisely depicts the essence of being exiled in home, and Amina's agency as an estranged, subject, and her estrangement is deeply materialized by the constraints of home and family. And we know that she finally commits a suicide in one of the rooms of that house. So this is I was talking about that how the personal is the political. At all levels, we will see the personal is the political. If we consider the elder son, Bakra of Salim Mirza, he is also kind of unable to get bank loans. He has to take care of his young family and he migrates to Pakistan. So each and every member of the Mirza household and the people who are associated to the Mirza household are, their lives are completely altered by the partition of India. Now it becomes, when we are reading cinema, I have often seen this. I realized, as a student of literature, that when we decode cinema, we decode in terms of plot, in terms of context, but we must look through certain devices, cinematic devices, which I found very interesting in Garam Hawa. I am mainly trained in decoding text, not cinema, but to me, I mean, for a layman like me, I could understand that. Okay, so cinematic representations, how is it kind of struck me, that how is this division, how is this constraint, how is the dilemma, the sorrow, how is it portrayed through the tools of cinema? That is what I wanted to read through the movie. And if we go back to the introductory scene where Salim Mirza has come to see off the his sister, I suppose. And the introductory scene where Salim Mirza is juxtaposed to the image of a moving train. He is standing and the train is moving. And this kind of, there's a kind of a binary that operates within the movie. I mean, this sets the tone of the binary. And what is the binary? That is the displaced, signified through the face of the crowd migrating through the train, including Salim's elder sister and the static Salim himself. So I think this whole, who is going to stay back, who is going to go, and that will be the main concern of the movie, is set in the first frame of the movie itself. Okay, and Salim himself is introduced in mid-shot, with the tombs of Agra visible in the background, and thereby establishing the inherent rootedness with the space he inhabits. So that struck me as a very poignant scene, and that exactly how the filmmakers have in their mind when they're trying to, from the text to the movie, they're trying to bring that to a frame of a movie. And we have seen the film's visual landscape, Agra, Fatehpur Sikri, the Taj Mahal, the Dargah, embodies the interwoven histories of faith and identity and that define the Indian civilization. Okay, so that is something which is very interesting, that there's a very strong established Islamic past in our country, which we just cannot obliterate. We just cannot, we cannot leave behind. And we say that if we are leaving behind, if you're going to someplace else, we are not carrying these within us. Okay, so and therefore the title itself, if we look at the title, Garam Hawa symbolizes the oppressive heat of the political intolerance, okay, and social upheaval against that kind of static nature and established truth of our country, which has got its multiple histories, which includes a very prolific Islamic history. Okay, and the other things that struck me was that MSFP uses images and sounds which become symbolic of the partition through the cinema. Okay, maybe when we are reading the text, we do not get to hear or see, but this is what happens when we see a movie. So images and sounds, when I'm talking about images and sounds, we see a lot of frames and large iron rods planted over the top of the new house. I mean, Amina coming down through a rope, holding a rope every time she comes down. This becomes a recurrent trope of the spatial configuration. Okay, the divide, the idea of division, a line, the Radcliffe line. Okay, and themes of alienation, rootedness, which ironically are the markers of displacement, divide. Okay, and it sometimes resembles a cage also, and eerie symbols of the barbed wire between India and Pakistan. So I found that quite interesting. I mean, when I did that struck me. And when I was reading up on Garam Hawa, I saw that critics also have talked about elaborately about the structure of the house, and the Haveli, how the kind of the shape, the Islamic structure, all these have been very, very well established by MS Sathyu. And for the sound effect, one thing that really, it kind of I still it left an indelible mark in my mind is that for the sound effect of Dadi's death and focusing as she dies almost mechanically with the sound of train. If we listen to it very carefully, we will hear the sound of train signaling the migration of another family member from India. And this kind of invades the soundscape. So, cinematic devices are very interesting to teach, to trace in a cinema. I mean, not only reducing it to a text, but also that how this text is made into a movie. Okay, so just let me take a look at the time. How much is the time? If okay, so yeah, so, uh, and this brings me to a kind of a concluding remark. I'm sure you're going to, tell me more about this. That is the final act. If we take a look at the movie, the final act of resistance and renewal. So that is what Garm Hawa has appealed to me so much. I will talk about it in the concluding remark. The Menon Hassan points out that in the aftermath of the partition of India, the minorities were often considered as potential immigrants, and the film immaculately captures such anxieties that the mainstream majority had nurtured against the minority. As Salim Mirza and his son Bakr Mirza exhaust themselves in search of loans, they are often blatantly and at times slightly denied aid under the pretext that they are Muslims, potential migrants, and not ideal citizens ready to immigrate at any time without clearing their debts. I mean, it often comes out from the Hindu, money lender or the banker. He says that आप लोग तो चले जाओगे. So this is how they were, I mean, with a preconceived notion. I mean, like, it is given like a hero of a Greek tragedy that is predestined, that your immigration is predestined. You are not going to live here. So there's a kind of premonition, and that premonition shrouds their life with so much of pain, so much of crisis, say. And so through the use of direct address, the film forces the audience to take into consideration the discriminatory scrutiny in today's society. And the mimetic occupancy of position of power also allows filmmaker Sathyu to make the audience evaluate their complicity with regards to the routine discriminations encountered by the minority subjects in their daily lives. This is by Menon. Okay, so this is something which is, as I said, that when Menon says that as potential immigrants, this becomes a kind of a given, a kind of fate, that the fates have been sealed, and no matter how much you want to do, this is you cannot alter it, like a Greek tragic hero. So but what happens is that such is the resilience of a human nature that in the striking finale, just as Mirza's prepare to leave India, Salim and his son Sikandar decide to stay. Joining a labor procession, they march forward, an act symbolizing solidarity beyond religious boundaries. This moment dismantles the notion of fixed religious identity, replacing it with a shared, evolving sense of Indianness. If we have seen Meghanagatara, the last final frame, that when Nita dies, there is one more lady protagonist who is who belongs to the working class, who is walking exactly the way Nita was introduced, with her sandals snapping, and she belongs to the working class of she represents the working class of the refugee women. So the struggle lives on. It continues through the lived experiences. It continues through the individuals and not shut down by a political decision. So evolving, and here is an evolving sense of Indianness. Sikandar's choice also to remain and struggle to reclaim identity encapsulates the secular spirit of India's constitution. a reaffirmation of the faith in nation's founding ideals. Salim's declaration, this is what he says, "Main yahan rahunga, I will not go anywhere, I will live in India," echoes the sentiment of countless Muslims who refuse to abandon their homeland despite of the adversity that they are facing. Okay, so just why I was having a discussion with Rubaya that why I wanted to talk about Garm Hawa is a very long time back. She had asked me that which film would you want to talk about? The enduring relevance of Garm Hawa. That is something which I thought that it is why it is pertinent. It can be pertinent to talk about Garm Hawa. So that is the last part that I'm going to talk about. That Garm Hawa completes 50 years since its release, and it continues to resonate with the contemporary India. The film's questions about identity, belonging, and secularism are far from being resolved. Has it been resolved? In the movie, there is a finality. There's a kind of a promised, resurrected consciousness among the people who have stayed back. But in reality, have we been able to rise above that? So is it, I would say that it is far from resolved. In an era where communal rhetoric still shapes the political discourse, Satyu's masterpiece invites us to revisit the promises of freedom and equality envisioned by Nehru and Gandhi. And I had talked about that how partition has been represented in cinema, but one figure that we cannot talk without remembering Manto, Sadat Hasan Manto. And if we remember the short stories like the Toba Tig Singh or the Dog of Titwal or the Thanda Ghost or then the Tale of 1947, if we go back to those, Holdo, open it. So depict the moral complexities of the subject at the receiving end of an event whose political implications are beyond their control. So Manto did focus on that. And Aisha Jalal, in The Pity of Partition, Manto's life, times, and work across India and Pakistan divide, comments. This is a comment which I found very striking with the discussion that we are doing today, is that I quote that his protagonists are testament to this belief that human depravity, though real and pervasive, can never succeed in killing faith, and all his subsequent faith lay in that kind of humanity, close quote. So this is what Aisha Jalal had to talk about Manto's characters who had faced the brunt continuum of sorrow that the partition had inflicted. Okay, so and Indian cinema has often kind of been witness to such camaraderie, harmony, and togetherness. We have often reflected on the realistic plot of the multi-starrer blockbuster Amar Akbar Antony, right? I mean, but such a movie could make a space for a secular coexistence, secular existence. The estranged brothers, if I remember the movie, the estranged brothers brought up in different religious beliefs of Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity, come together to save the sorrow-stricken mother, who is also metaphorically the motherland. Okay, and from Ray Satranj Ke Khilari to Umrao Jan, if we remember, or Pakiza, so as to say, to its linguistic sonority, the lovely Urdu, dialogues, to the performances in Tumri, Khayal, or Kathak, has overwhelmed us with a poignant Islamic heritage in India. And Garm Hawa, in the context of conflict, put forth the trials and the tribulations of any Salim or Sikandar in the middle class Muslim surviving with honest labor in India today. Garm Hawa brings us to ask the question in the contemporary context as a conscientious citizen of a secular nation, that is it not derogatory on our part to burden our Muslim friends with the guilt of some group of people who have committed an act of terrorism? And I was talking in the Pahalgam context when I was reflecting this in my mind. It also brings us to ask the question that is it not defying bonds of friendship and harmony and to incite hate speech violence targeted to a specific sect of Indians, as we call them. Salim in the movie, in spite of being harassed and ostracized and marginalized, not for a single time alters in his belief that India is his motherland. Nearly 80 decades ago, realizing the inevitability of partition on religious lines, Gandhi had asserted that he was both Indian and Pakistani. Garam Hawa transcends these binaries. It reclaims the humanistic core of Indian identity. Through the Mirza family's endurance, the film reminds us that the idea of India lies not in exclusion but in coexistence. So, I mean, when I did my, I offer a syllabus on, I offer a course in partition studies. So this time, when the Pahalgam did happen, and I mean, there was a kind of a violence that was targeted against a very specific sect of Indians. I went back to seeing movies, and this is the movie that I included in syllabus, just to one more time ratify these questions that this idea of togetherness, a very elaborate point in past. Does any of the contemporary crisis, which is driven by certain political discourses, can it I mean falter our belief that the idea of the greater Indian consciousness? So this is what I wanted to talk about, and this is the third time maybe I'm saying that, due to this festivities which we had an elaborate month of festivities, and Monday and Tuesday again we had the chat in India. So I mean, with this I could not concentrate on a lengthier discussion, but the thing that I wanted to talk about, I was reflecting that it is in this beautiful diversity that our togetherness lies, and the cinema and a platform like this that we're discussing, bringing people from different time zones, from different parts of India, I mean, definitely provides us an opportunity to discuss that. The film raises in this context that how are we going to negotiate this act of violence, which is initiated by certain political discourses, and how are we going to put a kind of firm faith in our constitution, in secular India, in kind of putting an end maybe to this long shadow of the partition. In my research, I mean, whatever little research I could do, I referred to Menon and Hassan, I referred to Bhutalia, I referred, there's a very good essay, Decentralization and Gender Perspectives in Partition of India, an analysis of Garm Hawa by Shomik Hajra and Shubham Dev from the Partition Literature and Cinema, which have been edited by Jaideep Sarkar and Rupan Mukherjee in 2020. So this is a new book. I have heavily referred to that, and I was in a month ago, there was a very insightful publication in Anandabazar Patrika. So about Garm Hawa, I mean, talking about the contemporariness of Garm Hawa, celebrating it 50 years. So if you ask me that the title that I would like to give to this discussion on paper, that is like, is it not my land? So Amina and Salim in Garam Hawa. So that is what I thought, that is the ultimate question that the film asks us, that was this not my land? Is this not my land? So with that, I end discussion, and I'm looking forward to your observations on the movie, so that I can take forward the ideas.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that insightful and thought-provoking discussion.
You?
Now, we would like to open the floor for questions from our audience. We encourage you to share your queries, observations, or comments related to tonight's discussion.
Rubaiya, can I come in?
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Antara, for not speaking just about the film per se, but actually bringing in the political and historical context, both at the time of its release, as well as the context of the plot of the film, that is, of course, partition. And yeah, you've already spoken about the censorship issues and the fact that it was released, I think a little after the
Mhm.
Bangladesh war,
Mhm.
makes that makes the very context of its release as well, I think, extremely significant.
Absolutely.
And uh, also, I thought that the figure of the wife, that is Salim Mirza's wife,
Jamila.
somehow, Jamila, somehow, like she it is a very, very, I mean, it is a very, she is a very, very important character in the film. And but at the same time, she is one who is, cast as um, a typical wife and mother who has to, kind of bear the emotional costs of this very large historical event,
Mhm.
and the turmoil of her of the contemporary times, that she lives in. But at the same time, there is, I mean, like she has no say in the decisions that are made for the family. For
Mhm.
instance, even during the end, like she just has she moves with the family, and then suddenly on seeing this procession and Salim joining them again, she has, no say in anything. She has to stay back with the
Mhm.
family, right?
Mhm.
So that also I thought was quite interesting as far as the
That
uh,
take
in,
by more Sikandar. I mean, if she is to stay back, she is to stay back. Yes,
yeah, yeah.
very.
So that kind of, that lack of agency for the
Mhm.
female character, that was something that I found interesting. And also, what is very poignant is the fact of the relevance of this film.
Mhm.
In a way, one would wish that it is no longer relevant, in the sense about a section of people having to constantly dig their heels in and claim the identity of Indian,
Yes,
so so in that sense, the very relevance of the film is poignant.
very, very true. Yes.
Yeah, that's about much that I have to say
Ma'am,
about.
may I just say that I'm a partition survivor, third generation partition survivor, actually.
Mm,
When
mhm.
I opened my grandfather's passport, it is written undivided India Potokali. So
Wow.
such a, I mean, document that if you ask him that in which country does he belong to, I mean,
Yes.
he's unable to answer. And then you
What
ask,
can he say?
yes,
Yes.
say, and then you ask him to, I mean, one day you make a kind of a NRC and you say that, I mean, uh, this home is a special construct as well. I mean, so
Mm,
as would Foucault would talk about, Lefebvre would talk about. So I think
yeah.
that's important. And what to this context, ma'am, if I don't know if you have written the women's, if you've read the women's courtyard by Khadija Mazdoor, who talks about that how
No.
women's lives were very much, shaped by the political discourse that is the independence movement, and how they constructed a separate kind of an identity within the domestic sphere, which is
Hmm.
negating
Yes.
the larger political discourse.
Yeah.
So that is very, as you have said, that Jamila is also a very important figure. I mean, we often
Important.
tend to overlook Jamila as a figure.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Rupaya, if I
If
can.
it, yes, ma'am, please.
Yeah. So, Antara, thanks so much for asking us to revisit this film, and also for your wonderful, opening comments and initiating the discussion. I must tell you that we did try to contact MS Sathyu to see if he would be able to join the discussion today. His told me that he's 95 and the Zoom call would be just too much of a strain on him, and therefore he did not join. Um, but yeah, so but about the film, I had a couple of comments that I was thinking of. One is there are many shots in the film where Salim Mirza is talking to someone. For instance, in the shot with the money lender, where the money lender is, not shown to us. He's almost as if he's talking
Faceless.
to the screen, yeah, to us. So it's like, so there are shots where it looks like the addressee is on the other side of the frame, but maybe the conversation is being carried out with an extra diegetic, audience, not necessarily to other characters within the intradiegetic space. So I thought that was quite interesting in the film. Secondly, unlike the other films that you mentioned, initially, which came in the 1990s, and also Bhutalia's and other feminist revisitings of partition. I thought that this film, like I was watching it after a while again, so I was thinking of, how the discourse in which the discursive context in which this film is made is quite different from that of the 90s, where in spite of what is happening to Salim Mirza and his family, there is no strong critique of the process of nation formation itself. So which we can see, let's say, in a film like Begum Jan, where you begin by talking about how meaningless it is, or like Toba Tek Singh, which looks at the entire process as ridiculous. Here, I felt that what is being critiqued is uh, one, Muslims being, pushed into a certain kind of isolationism, and their attempt towards the end to come out of that, to kind of form for themselves, a social or a political life, which is what we see happening towards the end. So the political moment and the of the Muslim League is now no longer an option, it looks like, for Salim Mirza. So he has to find his bearings in other social and political formations. So that seems to be the push. But in itself, there is no critique of the nation, uh, or processes of nation formation itself. I felt that maybe that's not coming out so strongly as it does in later feminist critiques. That was one. The other thing I was thinking of also has to do with the way in which this creation of an ideal Muslim character in the form of Salim Mirza. So there are so many other Muslim characters as well in the film, all of whom, or many of whom, like the brother, marked by their duplicity, so, or even the Pupa, I think, the uncle, the father-in-law. Yeah, so all of them somehow seem to be lacking in by making the choice to go to Pakistan, they seem to be lacking in a certain kind of moral or ethical, concern, or they don't seem to, they seem to be somehow immoral. So I was just thinking about these, and also the younger generation, Shamshad, and even the other boy who goes away and does not
Passive.
come back, Kasim, who betrays. So I was just wondering, so the good Muslim is the one who takes on all that is meted out stoically, but does not exercise the political choice of going to Pakistan, and tries to reaffirm his identity, Indian identity, by evoking maybe other kinds of political identities, such as the left identity. So these were some
So what
strange.
the observation this is, ma'am, that whether, I mean, we can talk about Halim and, even Salim Mirza's own son, he said that I don't have any option, I will go. And my students asked me one thing, that is Qasim, when leaving Amina and going there. I mean, can we judge him? And I said, no, he was caught in certain circumstances. I mean, what a wonderful observation. I did not think about the other characters. I was thinking about Qasim, that how was it was so irresponsible of him to, leave behind Amina. But how can we, I mean, at that time, how can we just put our, how can we judge someone on circumstances, as you are talking about? Absolutely. That what about the other characters? What about, though the moral concerns of such Muslims is something which is not much talked about. I have not read it in many places.
Yeah, like Ambedkar in Partition and or Pakistan, or the Partition
Yes,
of India,
yes,
in that
yes,
small little booklet, has very persuasively argued that, made out a case, in a chapter for the formation of two nations.
yes.
And a peaceful exchange of populations. He says that there is, there are so many models, such as that are available in the European context, where nation formation has led to peaceful exchange of populations. So per se, the movement across borders and boundaries need not have been looked upon as a criminal act or an act of betrayal. It was a political choice, that was available to some, and they exercised it. So I was just thinking, how this film looks at that. Yeah.
Yeah, when we were talking about Pakistan or the partition of India by Ambedkar. Yes. And also in this context, the idea of nationalism by Tagore, that also comes in very, what is it from the Western idea of nationalism? How is it different from our idea of nationalism? I think we have to reflect on these philosophies, Gandhian, Nehruvian idea of nationalism, even when the Muslim League was trying to construct the Sikhs were trying to. I mean, these are the philosophies we must get back, and I think this is a movie which does handhold us to look at all those, that exactly, that how are we talking about the moral standards of a Muslim, good Muslim, bad Muslim, good Indian, consigned to a secularism. It's a very, indeed, a very insightful. I've written it down. I'm going to work on it.
Yeah, can I?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. See, I'm Madhvi from University of Hyderabad.
Hello.
Yeah, Dr. Antara, really very nicely you put it in this movie. Actually, you analyzed it quite well. Actually, I was just thinking, this film, it emerges at a very crucial historical moment when the Nehruvian project of secularism was being tested against the lived realities of partition aftermath. And this film's, but I see that this film's refusal to portray Muslims either as victims or villains and its insistence on the moral or political complexity, of Salim Mirza. I think that it complicates dominant narratives of national belonging. I just like to know from your standpoint, in memory and partition studies, how does this film challenge the post-colonial state's selective memory making process? Do you see the film as articulating a counter discourse on citizenship and secular modernity? One that anticipates the crisis of Muslim identity within India's nation building narrative. And I was also thinking that, as you, a scholar working on gender and memory, I would like to draw your attention to the near silence of female characters in this film. The woman's presence, if you see, is emotionally charged, yet largely framed through the domestic sphere, through waiting or mourning or quiet or endurance. It's like that actually. So in feminist memory studies, if we talk about silence itself becomes a form of testimony,
True.
an effective residue of trauma that escapes archival representation most of the times. So how might we interpret this gendered silence in this film? Not as absence, but as a subtle form of witnessing that complicates both patriarchal and national narratives of partition. And in your view, what ethical responsibilities do you think that filmmakers carry when representing such silences tied to gendered sufferings and displacement in this, particularly in this movie?
Hmm. It's a very interesting question, that how, I mean, what ethical responsibility would a filmmaker have in portraying the silence? Actually, when we were talking about, cultural memory and gender, Marian Harsh talks about this very articulately. She talks about this, and she says that both gender and past have already been constructed. This is the construct that has been given to us, and we are working on it. And the female characters in the movie, of course, they are silent. Silence forms a trope, as ma'am has pointed out. The character of Jamila, she's from a very beginning, she's saying that we can go, but she's never a kind of an active agent. Amina meets a very tragic end. Dadi, she's literally hiding in the one of the kind of a place in the Haveli. So definitely they're not given any active voice. And I think that MS Sathyu what was trying to, portray here as family as the smallest unit of power, that we're trying to talk about power at different levels. And here family and the patriarchal unit is the smallest unit of power that we were talking about in the construct of family and home. And I think that is a kind of an initiation to a step where we are putting forth three important characters, female characters, which can incite this kind of dialogue, which can take up this dialogue. I mean, as early as in 1974, when, women were caught and in this kind of turmoil, in this I would say that embroiled in this kind of conflict that they found. And if we trace the partition, the abduction act that was kind of constructed by both Pakistan and India after in the immediate aftermath, we see that women did not have any agency in whatsoever. And that is very finely articulated in Amrita Pritam's Pinjar. That is later on being, made a movie into. I think these things they encourage us to engage in dialogue. That you are saying that exactly what kind of memorialization would we have if we talk about the partition, women and partition, in the context of women and partition. That is a very important point that you have, thought about. And I'm sure if this reaches out to a larger audience, the younger members of the film fraternity would definitely talk about this anti-discourse of how gender and past have been constructed and how that can be negotiated through the more dialogues that women can engage into. So, ma'am, would you think that, yes, this can be a way forward?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi everyone,
Hello.
Shomitra over here.
Hi.
I've been hearing to the discussion which has been initiated with Antara. Thank you
Yes.
so much, Antara, for a very, very rich discussion at the start. I think that there are a couple of things which we might be looking at. One is
Yes.
that when the setting of the film is at Agra, and Agra is mostly north central, okay, steeped in history, and
Mm.
perhaps MS Sathyu is wanting to say that a Muslim family in Agra,
Mm.
in the context of partition, was perhaps thinking it did not go away to Pakistan. A part of that family does not go away to Pakistan. Is perhaps thinking that हम तक ये जो बौछार है partition का वो नहीं पहुंचेगा. It will not come on to us. Okay.
Mm.
And then there is, throughout the film, there is a sense every time they say that we are going to go away, or people say around them that they are going to go away. Perhaps there is a sense of entrapment which comes through. Okay, the entrapment is not only from the outside but also from the inside. With the family perhaps thinking, जाए तो जाए कहाँ, और तो जाने की कोई जरूरत ही नहीं है, और जाए भी तो पाकिस्तान नहीं जा सकते, because it is not possible anymore for us to go. And by the time this film is made, which is in 1974, which is post Bangladesh and pre-emergency, the Muslim population perhaps had a sense of disillusionment also, which Satya perhaps might be thinking of. I'm not very certain of it. We might look at it also. Sense of disillusionment that perhaps the time was there for us to go away to a nation which was based on religion, but now we cannot go away anymore. Okay, there's no place to go anymore. Okay, so we have to live with the dard of partition, the anxiety of partition, the crisis of the Muslim identity, and there is nowhere to go. So that is perhaps the narrative that Satyu is wanting to talk about. Maybe we can look at it from that angle also, particularly taking into account that the settings are there. Thank you.
So you were talking about the dilemma that that they would find themselves in, that
I think
फैज़स पोएम या दाग दाग उजाला ये शब गज़ीदा शहर इनकी तो हमें इंतजार नहीं थी. So they have, you know, done so much. I mean, that is not where they found themselves. So yeah, this anxiety of the entrapment that they are caught in of the Muslim population is something I think the movie is very strongly advocating. Yes, yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Hello.
Hi.
Can I pose a question? So this is a small observation that I made. While watching this movie, I was struck by the total absence of bloodshed and violence. That's usually a kind of unassociated feature with the stories or like movies about partition.
Yes.
The pace of the movie is so slow and reflective, and there is no like hurry. There's no hurry at all. The movie prioritizes reflection and pays narration rather than spectacles. So I was thinking if this is a kind of a hallmark of that phase movie, 1960s and 1970s, or is this the stance by MS Sathyu to pay a kind of tribute to or like to put it in a different way, is this a kind of abstinence from dramatization of the entire episode in respect of the victims, or is it a kind of sanitization where they would keep away the disturbing elements and present it as aesthetically as possible?
Yes.
So, yeah, I would like your observation on this.
It's a very difficult question. Actually, I was discussing about that the absolute faith on humanity that Manto had expressed in his novels. Sorry, in his short stories. And here, I think as you have said, the complete absence of bloodshed, which is a very important marker in any partition movie. I mean, whenever we talk of partition, the image of the train loaded with, the refugees that comes to our mind. And it is actually about going this from this side of the land to the other, but there is completely no such shot on the screen which would talk about this violence. This violence is something which is very systematically imbibed in the narrative, in the fabric of the movie, which is not very obvious. It implicates the dangers of this kind of violence, which is there in our minds as we continue to stay as neighbors, which comes out during the time of conflict. So it is slow, reflective in nature, as you have said. I've written it down. The pace of the movie is reflective in nature. I mean, and I think that it could be that Satyu's his own perception about that, how the greater spectacle of violence, even if it has not touched the lives of people like Amina or Salim Mirza, they have not their family members killed in a communal riot, but still it continues to dismember the family. I mean, if not physical dismemberment, but a kind of a metaphorical dismemberment through the loss of the family. So I think that is something which is very imbibed, which is something very hinting. This violence that is there is hinting, and it is through the everyday lived experience long after the partition is over. I think, ma'am, I mean, that is what my thoughts on this your observation would be. Absolutely, the absence of bloodshed being at a kind of a cult partition movie, ma'am.
I think the lack of violence is there because of the fact that this is more towards central India than towards Punjab or towards Bengal. That could be one of the reasons why there is a lack of graphic description of violence in the movie. Perhaps if the
Immediately,
setting had
yes.
been somewhere else, it might have been a different way altogether for Sathyu.
That you're saying that setting is steeped in a kind of a central Agra, so that is away from the borders, so as to say.
Yeah, that is the point, I think.
Uh,
Because
you
although a partition carries with its deep scars of violence, but
hmm.
it is also true that all these incidents of violence were more towards
Hmm.
Punjab and Bengal, and
Hmm.
not towards the central part of India, where it was still holding on to a narrative of people staying together for ages and centuries together. Maybe that is the reason why there is a, because if you look at something like, say,
In our
Earth
side,
in 1947 Earth, then it is very different, because
yes.
they talked about the train incident
Hmm.
a short while ago. That is because it is absolutely in the middle of North India. Therefore, there is this description. But with regard to Agra, perhaps there was no need for him to show that violence, and Satyu perhaps did not want it to be shown. It is also possible.
In Jaya Chatterjee's Bengal Undivided, she does talk about, as you mentioned, that the Bengali Bhadralok, the elite of Bengal, that how would they, negotiate the partition in living in Calcutta, and that to the borders. Yeah, that could be a very plausible explanation, that away from the borders and not, I mean, the central setting is something which is important as far as vis-a-vis the absence of bloodshed.
Can I come in?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's also, very interesting that one of the partition films that we consider, the best in the oeuvre of partition films comes from a South Indian.
Hmm.
MS Sathyu is from the South. And in the South, partition is not so much a part of the collective consciousness the way it is,
Oh,
for people in the North or the East. So perhaps that could also be one of the reasons why, it's not that gory violence of partition that is the filmmaker's concern, but rather it's like, as you aptly put it, the dismemberment of family, even if it is not through, losing family members, maybe, but losing livelihood, losing homes. These are the bigger and more pertinent concerns for um, I mean, for Satyu, who stands, outside of this community of those who were directly affected by the partition.
So we started saying disjunct is also a kind of a violence, right?
Yeah.
Disjunct. Yes.
If Sanjay sir, Sridhar sir, or Tarakeshwar sir would like to ask a question or add a comment, please feel free to do so.
And we are also looking towards the new census of India in the next year completing. So last was 2011. So here we are when we are talking about empirical data, history, the aftermath of the partition that we are all, we would be taking into account in the recent future.
I think this is an apt film for discussion, which actually takes us away from the current discussion on partition in the academics. Why I'm saying it is one, as the previous discussion has pointed out, a South Indian or a Central Indian perspective, which is neither Bengali nor Punjabi. Because the current academic discourse is dominated by the narratives either in Punjabi or in Bengali.
Right.
That is
Yes.
number one. Number two, it is not actually the partition, it is post-partition. And the discussion is not so about state. State is here completely absent in the sense that it only comes as notices and summons, where they take away and they release them. Not that permanent, somebody is permanently incarcerated. Since it's a post-partition and it is not the state, the atrocities of the civil society,
Yes, sir.
whether it is the union of which he is a part of, or even family members, this relationship, how they exploit the situation. And actually, the narrative, in a way, supporting partition was inevitable
Yes.
because the civil society is divided completely. So it's not the question of violence, of physical violence, but the kind of violence that is perpetrated on the people who did not move. It is not the people who have migrated. Because the problem is with the people who couldn't migrate or who didn't want to migrate. So the story revolves around people who refused to migrate and how they were actually forced to migrate or how they were made to regret migration.
Yes, sir.
By whom? I don't think it is state. State again becomes a pawn in the relatives, in the friends who tip the state that this fellow has come and he doesn't have a valid visa, you put him in jail. So in that sense, it's more about the society, civil society, a broken civil society, than about the state. I think that would be the actual perspective of uh, a South Indian perspective or a Middle Indian perspective, which had
Yes.
not seen that kind of violence.
Yes, sir.
So I think we need to move our discussion to the migrants to the non-migrants
Okay.
who did not migrate or who did not want to migrate or who couldn't migrate, and what happened to them. The point of discussion of the entire narrative is about people who couldn't migrate or who didn't want to migrate and what happened to them after migration.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
In that sense, I think this film is very important for our discussion.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you. There's one wonderful novel by Hassan Azizul Haq, which is known as Agun Paki. The woman of the household refused to migrate to Bangladesh after the partition, if I remember correctly. So, I mean, that is very interesting that how would she say that, no, I would not go because I have my home here. So that the people who did not migrate, that is your point, sir. That is something which is very interesting. Yes.
Ma'am, can I come in quickly? Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for most for joining us over this discussion of an important movie. This took me back in time because when in my days of my pursuit of a collegiate education, we had a paper of obviously of partisan literature, which could never do without the movie Garm Hawa and many other pieces of a work of literature by authors who wrote during the time of partition. So this was for me the movie for a second time. And what I took in from the movie was essentially, yes, the struggle and the capitalist abuse that was on a high rise in the country at the time. How the Muslims in India at that time had to fight off capitalism. So that was the first kind of like a notice that caught my eye. And secondly, as I was just watching through the movie, I kind of found some type of reflection of the Ophelia complex described by Sir William Shakespeare in Hamlet, whose adaptation in India by the director Vishal Bharadwaj, namely Heather, has also been made to accommodate this complex, where the actress Shraddha Kapoor plays the character of Ophelia in the movie, and we see Ophelia dying at the end at the loss of Ophelia's father, and also at the admission of the truth that this is Ophelia's own lover who causes the death. So in this movie, when I was watching, that has to do with the father and daughter's relationship. But this time I saw kind of a different angular twist to that complex when Amina dies. But this time the twist is that the father is the one who finds out Amina. So I was just wanting to know from you and find out from you if you considered this type of a notice correct enough to be in any way associated with the Ophelia complex, somehow like that. And yes, the second notice that I would like to draw your attention to is the practice of the vegetarian and non-vegetarian battle that came into view. There's one moment in the movie when Salim Mirza is going to is kind of just having a the delivery of the messages and the voiceover of the movie, wherein Salim Mirza is looking for a new Haveli, a new place to take their family to. And there are different reasons why people happen to turn them down, even if they try to hide the insecurity that they're all insecure about them also running away and flying away to Pakistan, just like their predecessors. So Salim Mirza once comes upon one of the landlords who says that they cannot rent the place to somebody who eats meat and somebody who feeds on the kind of the flesh of in terms of a flesh of the animals whom they worship. So there's that type of contrast, which is reflected in the present time in the novel of the former Nobel Prize winner, namely Han Kang, who won the Nobel Prize and who has written a novel called The Vegetarian, which I'm really glad I have recently read. So that novel also encapsulates something about the Korean time in South Korea. So this seems like I would love to know from you, since this is also something I found in a movie that's ages old, to us. And at the present, we see Han Kang writing something about not just India, but Korea, which is also finding similar reflections. So what are your views on these two angles?
Thank you, Ananya. I mean, that is why I find the movie so contemporary. I mean, it's in so many subtle ways it touches. I mean, मच्छी खाने वाले लोग, मांस खाने वाले लोग, and that is how we divide our community. And you see that has been one of the, I mean, current controversies that we are treading, a very hot kind of a debate, source of debate. I mean, and Sathyu looks at it kind of a potential divide as a rupture of over the vegetarian. That is why, you know, Garm Hawa at each and every frame provides some you know, I mean, offers something which you can absolutely, I mean, talk about the contemporary crisis. I mean, not only locally in India, but if it's talking about Han Kan's vegetarian, I mean, the post-human condition. I mean, rather, I would read it as a post-human condition. So that is something which is you're not, yeah. Yes, you were saying something, but I think you've muted yourself, no?
Yes, ma'am, you can go on now.
Yeah, sure. So that is what I was saying. And the other thing that the first thing that you said, Ophelia complex, yes, I mean, that is after you have said that is something which is very Freudian, very literary. I mean, that is how a student of literature might come in while, you know, decoding a text. That is what I said, that we always have this tendency of decoding a text vis-a-vis, you know, psychoanalysis. Definitely, I mean, if you're talking about, it's a microcosmic, you know, of state policies where, I mean, the father and the son and the lover comes in, and adaptation of the same in Hyder. And definitely we can think, I mean, of looking at it's going to be a very important perspective. I would strongly, I mean, think about that.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I like to delve deeper than having got your positive thumbs up. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Anyone else? If there are no further questions or comments, we will conclude today's session.
Thank you so much, Rubea, for having me. Thank you, TFO. It
Thank
was
you, ma'am, for
interesting, and you know, I
being
have
here.
full note, three pages of you know, takeaway from this discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Antara. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
On behalf of TFO, we sincerely thank you, ma'am, for your valuable time and insights.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night to all of you.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye. Bye, ma'am.
Bye. Bye.